It's so good to be in church this morning. Can you do me a favor and help me welcome everybody joining us online today? Welcome to all of you. So good to have you. And also, let's welcome our friends at our brand new Nairobi, Kenya campus. Come on. Awesome to have you guys and gals with us this morning as well. So awesome. If I haven't met you, my name is Kelly, and I get to serve as our Middle River campus pastor. And today's pretty crazy for me because 4 months ago was the last time that I preached here, and it was a pretty weird day for me personally. Some of you remember during the first gathering on that day, about 4 months ago, I started to have a stroke. And I didn't know it, and then I preached in the second gathering while having a stroke, which is pretty awesome if you think about it. Like, I got me some bragging rights, you know what I'm saying? No, I don't recommend that. That's pretty dumb, actually. Don't do that. But as we're singing this last song, this new song, man, I just am overwhelmed at watching people being water baptized whose lives have been changed, and then personally knowing that God just saved me, man, and just took care of me during that time. And so I just thank Jesus, man. So grateful, so grateful. Hey, last week we kicked off this message series. Actually, Pastor Joey, your campus pastor. Don't you appreciate Pastor Joey? He is awesome, man. And we kicked off the Grateful Message series last week. We're going to finish it up today. And we actually had a challenge last week to just show gratitude every day leading up to Thanksgiving. How many of you are excited about some Thanksgiving food all up in your belly, right? Like, we're so pumped about that. And so we're grateful for that. Here's the deal. Today we're going to talk about what I think is the twin of gratitude, and that is contentment. That really what we're going to see is that gratitude and contentment feed off of each other in all the right ways. Like, when I intentionally choose to be thankful for the blessings that I have in my life, and when I live that way, I find that I'm just more content with where I am and what I have. And likewise, when I choose a life of contentment, it just helps me to be a whole lot more grateful. It's an awesome cycle. But before we dive into kind of the meat of the message, we just got to be honest and admit that it is not always easy to be content, is it? I mean, we look around, man, and there's this tension as I spit all over. There is this tension, for all of you on this side, that creeps in, right? When we look around and there are just some things in our life that we're not content with. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I think it started in middle school and high school. Because for me, like, and you may be the same way, when I got into high school, it was the first time that I was faced with what crew am I going to hang out with? What group am I going to hang out with? And it's breeding ground, man, for your contentment to go out the window. And so I realized really quickly that even though I was pretty good at street football, how many of you ever play street football where you got to call timeout because the car is coming? Because you want to be two-hand touched, not tackled by a car. That's not good. And so I was pretty good in street football, but I was not an athlete, so I wasn't going to hang out with the athletes, right? I quickly learned that. And then I realized when I got into high school that I wasn't really that book smart. My mom said I was smart, got to high school, realized my mom lied. You know, I'm saying, like, my mom lied. Like, what's up with that, right? So I wasn't going to hang out with the really smart people because I couldn't relate to people that got all A's and got on the honor roll. I just knew what a Tootsie Roll was, and so it worked better in the first gathering. We'll try it in the third. And so I, hanging out with, I couldn't, it was weird. And then for me, I couldn't play a woodwind instrument. And if you can't play a woodwind instrument, you're not going to be in the what? The band, exactly. So I didn't like the band people, and they definitely didn't like me. We were pretty poor growing up, so I wasn't going to hang out with the rich kids. And so I found myself in high school bouncing around from one group to the next, trying to find out where I fit in, trying to find out who I was going to hang out with. And eventually, I got introduced to this voice of comparison in a pretty big way. And early on in life, whether it's middle school, high school, or even earlier or beyond that, we discover and are introduced to this really bad friend called discontentment. It's just not a good friend. Because all of us find out pretty early in life that there is always somebody with more than us, right? Somebody who is richer, skinnier, smarter, hipper, sexier, talented-er, girlfriend is prettier, boyfriend is cute-er. I mean, just fill in the blank-er. There's always somebody else that's got more-er than you. And it's two little letters, but isn't it true that those two little letters drive us pretty crazy? to the point where it drives us so crazy that we're not satisfied with just being we want to be est. So we want to be the blank est, right? We want to be the smart est. We want to be the best est, right? We want to be the richest and the skinniest, and we want to be the retweetest. I got to be careful how I say that, right? We want to be the spiritual est, and we all know that pursuing and est, we know it'll drive us crazy, but we do it anyways. So here's the big idea for today. I'm going to write this down. There is no win in comparison. Come on, man. There's no win in comparison. Again, we're talking about creating a lifestyle and a culture of gratitude. And how many of you know it's so hard to live a life of gratitude when you're discontented? It's really difficult. And in fact, comparison puts the dis in front of contentment to make it discontentment. And discontentment fueled by comparison is actually a dangerous way to live, because we'll find ourselves just killing ourselves in our jobs, financially, relationally, in our families, emotionally, even spiritually, because we get this bad case of comparisonitis. And it doesn't help that we live in a world where we seemingly know what everybody else has and how good they have it, right? Even if it's an illusion, we know what they're driving and where they work and how perfect their little family is and how many Bible verses on humility they memorized. And we know that because they posted it in their humble way, right? It's like, okay, right? So here's the deal. The tension is real. There is a tension between contentment fueled by gratitude, which is good, and discontentment that is fueled by comparison. And the bad news is, I don't think that tension goes away when you graduate high school or even college. I think that we're going to wrestle with this tension for the rest of our lives. We're going to constantly be faced with the choice between contentment and discontentment for the rest of our lives. But the truth is, we have a choice. We have a choice. So we're speaking this message at all of our campuses today, and here's the deal. We want to offer a way forward. We want to offer all of us, ourselves included, a way to change our thinking and live more in the land of contentment. Because I don't know about you, but I have this little whisper that creeps up in my head sometimes, and I think you know the whisper I'm talking about. It's the whisper that's like, you need what they have. You need what they have to be more acceptable and respectable and lovable. I mean, isn't that really what it boils down to? You need what they have to be more respected and more accepted and more loved. And what's so crazy is that whoever you're comparing yourself with, whoever you're competing against, they have the same whisper in their head. And the more that we give in to this whisper, the more we keep making decisions based on this whisper, we're in for a whole lot of trouble, because no matter what you have or what you have accomplished, there is no win in comparison. It doesn't lead anywhere. So, for the rest of our time together, we're going to hang out with the wisest man that ever lived. His name is Solomon. You read about him in the Old Testament, kind of part 1 of your Bible. And Solomon, he had it all. He had done it all. He had been there, done that, and bought the t-shirt, and it was made out of gold, right? Because he really was the smartest. He really was the richest and the coolest and the wisest king in history. And he punches comparison and discontentment right in the face when he says this in Proverbs 14. He says, a heart of peace gives life to your body, but man, envy rots the bones. Make a t-shirt out of that. It's so true. I mean, isn't it true how much time we waste, how much energy we waste comparing ourselves with other people or the culture around us? But this tension, man, this tension does not have to control us. This tension does not have to drive us, because as long as I'm trying to keep up with those people, I'm not able to keep up with who God made me to be, right? I will miss out on the best that God has for my life, wearing myself out, because I'm trying to compare myself and compete with people that don't even know I'm competing with them. Come on, y'all, right? In fact, Solomon, I love this. He puts into words what this pursuit really is all about. What this pursuit of comparison is, and it fuels this discontentment in our life. And this is so awesome because what we want to give you today is a mental line and an emotional line of defense, so that when you start drifting toward the and the est type of thinking that leads to discontentment, you can bring this phrase up and shut down that whisper. You can shut it down. Just a couple of phrases today. Solomon at this point he's an older guy. And he's been there, he's done that, he's so wealthy. He's accomplished, just massive things. He has more life experience than any of us in this room, any of us watching online. And he's downloading some wisdom for us to live by. So in Ecclesiastes 4:4, he says this, and I saw. So he's talking about the past, right? All of his experience, he's like, this is what I've seen. This is what my observation is. And I saw that all toil, so work and striving, all toil and all achievement spring from one person's envy of another. You got to remember, Solomon is not delusional. Solomon is not paranoid. He's not jealous. He's not speaking this out of an unhealthy state of mind. He is one of the wisest, if not the wisest man that's ever lived. And he's like, this is what I've seen. He's like, I got this. I understand this. Most people, they do what they do because they're competing with others. Guys, this is not just a 21st century issue. This goes back 3,000 plus years. And the embarrassing truth that he points out is this, that everybody is determining where they are in relation to where somebody else is. They're determining their proximity in life, what they have or don't have, compared to another human being. How crazy is that? And so he says that. He calls it out. He's like, this too is meaningless. There's no point to it. And then he gives us our first phrase for today that we want you to memorize. We want you to get it in your head, get a mental image, because it's such a great picture of what this lifestyle is all about when you're just chasing and striving and working. And so I'm going to read the whole passage, and then the phrase is at the end. He says this again. He said, and I saw that all toil, work, and striving, and all achievement spring from one person's envy of another. This too is meaningless, and there's the phrase, a chasing after the wind. A chasing after the wind. Isn't that a great, can you imagine you're in a park and somebody runs by like this and you're like, hey, what you doing? They're like, I'm chasing the wind. And you're like, call the cops. You know what I'm saying? Like, something ain't right. Right? But that's what we do. Chasing after the wind. It is endless. It is pointless. There is no finish line. There is no trophy because there is no winner and there is no peace. There's just not arg. That's pirates. We're cool with pirates. Pirates are cool, right? But it's a chasing after the wind. And that type of lifestyle, I'm speaking from experience, is a dissatisfaction guaranteed, because comparison is what puts in discontentment. And what's so tragic is that comparison steals the joy from our accomplishments. We can't even enjoy the things that we have been able to do. We don't even enjoy the things we do have because we think there's always somebody else with more. But what if we got really, really grateful and content with what God has given us? Come on, man. So, man, when you do that, when you catch yourself, man, you just catch yourself. Some of you are comparing right now. You're going to compare for the next hour and a half. You're going to look at somebody and be like, I wish I had nice skin like that. Right? I wish I looked as good in that outfit as she does. Nobody really talks like that. That's all in my head, right? I wish I had cool shoes like he has. I wish I could sing like they do. I wish I had a gray beard like Pastor Kelly has. I know. Keep trying. Keep eating some veggies. Because there's no coloring here, people. This is natural. Stress. You know what I'm saying? It's all, before I had kids, it was all black. Not anymore. So when you catch yourself drifting into that land of discontentment, when that whisper comes in of comparing, you need to say to yourself out loud, maybe not so out loud that other people can hear you, but out loud for you to hear yourself and change your thinking. You like, look at what they got, look at that car, look at that house, look at that achievement. You just need to say, stop, hold on, stop. It's great for them. That's chasing after the wind, and I don't chase the wind. Come on, y'all need to memorize that. That's chasing the wind, and man, I don't chase the wind. Because here's the thing, I may not know a whole lot about you, maybe I've never met you, but I can tell you this, you were not created to chase the wind. You were not created to chase somebody else's achievements out of jealousy. You were not created to chase somebody else's possessions out of envy. You were not created to chase the wind. Come on, somebody. Right? You were created to chase only one thing, and that is God's amazing plan for you. In fact, you can say it this way, you were called by God to run a race, not chase the wind. And the two things are very different. Come on. Right? So I may not know you personally, but I know this, that life is too precious and your life is too short and your time is too valuable to waste any of it chasing the wind. So stop and remind yourself, I don't chase the wind. Great for them. I don't chase the wind. Now, fortunately, Solomon doesn't stop there because he's wise enough to know that we can ricochet all the way to the other extreme. We can be like, well, if I can't be as good as them or as popular as them or as pretty or as successful, what's the point? We're all just going to die anyway. So just throw our hands up, lower the bar, give up, and become passive. And Solomon's like, no. In fact, he says this in the next verse, Ecclesiastes 4:5. He's like, fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. He's like, no, like, giving up isn't the answer. Being unproductive and not having goals and trying to grow, that's not the answer either. In fact, in the next verse, he brings into balance these two extremes. He's like, don't compare yourself with other people and chase after the wind, but also don't shut down and quit. And in this very next verse, these couple of lines, man, he brings these two extremes into harmony. In verse 6, he says, better one hand with tranquility, so doing something, right, than two hands with toil and chasing after the wind. Isn't that good? Better one hand with peace and tranquility and joy than two hands working so hard and chasing after the wind. And the problem is, though, in our culture, one handful is not enough. Who wants one handful? That's like eating one fig Newton, right? Like, nobody does that. I'll just have one potato chip. No, you won't. Right? We want 4 handfuls. We'll stuff it between our toes if we have to. If you doubt me, watch yourself on Thursday. You know what I'm saying? Come on. And if Solomon could walk out on this stage right now, he'd say, guys, listen to me. I've got more than all of you. I've done more than all of you. You need to be quiet and listen to me. I'm telling you, better one hand with tranquility and peace and satisfaction and right, and joy than 2 handfuls that are full of striving and anxiety and working really hard and FOMO and chasing after the wind. And so tranquility means satisfaction. It means contentment. Tranquility means when you pull up to a stoplight in your 2005 Ford Escort and another car is next to you, it's a 2020 BMW, and there's a girl in that car the same age as you, you can look over and genuinely say, I'm good. I mean, don't look at her and be like, I'm good. Like, because she gone. You know what I'm saying? You can be like, no, I meant my life in Jesus. I'm good with my life in Jesus. I got a freedom church. Don't tell them, don't say that. No bumper stickers. Nope. Right? But genuinely being good, like tranquility, man, with one handful is like going over to your older sibling or younger sibling's massive house. And it's a house that's so big it's got a gate that you have to press a button and be like, hello, blood relative, may I enter into your dwelling? You know what I mean? And you may enter. And the gates open and angels sing and you take an hour on the driveway and you get to their big old 5,000 square foot house and you have a great time. And then you drive home to your modest sized, smaller home, and you sit down inside and you, tranquility, oh, listen to it, is genuinely going, I am so happy for them. I'm really happy for them. That's awesome. Because you know what? This doesn't just give us a mental line of defense. This gives us an emotional defense because you feel differently when you're contented. You're like, I am genuinely happy that they got into that Ivy League school. I'm really happy for him. I am really happy that they got a bigger wedding than I got and more people came and it was just a bigger event. I'm so happy for them. And there's no sarcasm and there's no cynicism. You're genuinely content. You're really content. You begin to feel differently. It's so good. Because here's what we assume, that more is better, but most of the time, chasing more leaves us wanting more. Chasing more leaves us wanting more. So we're going to finish up with this. I love this. So Solomon, he ends this whole line of thinking with a quick little story to make his point. And this story is like the exclamation point at the end of it. And he says this in verse 8. He's like, there was a man who was all alone. He had neither son nor brother. And it's like the beginning of a country song, right? There was a man that was all alone. He had neither son nor brother, and his dog died. And that is died in country. A little interpretation. And we would look at that last part and we would say, well, what's the big deal that he has neither son nor brother, right? Well, in that culture, and I even think in our culture, it's a really big deal because he didn't have anyone to leave everything to. I mean, this guy's getting it. He's working. He's amassing so much. He didn't have anybody to leave it to. And so he goes on talking about this guy telling this story. He said, there was no end to his toil, his work, and yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. And that is where so many of us land in our lives. We work and work harder and harder, amassing more and more wealth and lands and possessions, chasing, but we're not content. Why? Because sometimes chasing more leaves us wanting more. But then this guy, he stops in the middle of his toil, in the middle of his work, and he asked a question that I wish I asked way earlier on in life. In fact, I would say this: the younger you ask this question and begin to lean into this question and wrestle it to the ground, the better off you're going to be and the more you're going to learn the secret to contentment. The quicker you answer this question, you're going to shut down that comparison whisper. And this is the question that he asked. He said, for whom am I toiling? He's working, sweating, first, second, and third shift, busting his tail, and he looks up and he's like, who am I doing this for? What am I trying to prove, and who am I trying to prove it to? Why am I doing all of this? And some of you need to ask this question of yourself. Because some of you are working so hard, but the truth is, if you're really brutally honest, the truth is you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for your older brother or your older sister because you don't feel like, and you have never felt like you measure up to them. For some of you, you are striving and working for the two handfuls because you're trying to live up to your mother's expectation. And let me tell you something, I don't know your mother, but you'll never win with your mother. And that may sound harsh, but let me explain what I mean. If you have not won with your mother by now, you may never win with her. And some of you, year after year after year, are trying to prove something to your mom, and the approval isn't coming. No matter how good you are, no matter how moral you are, no matter how hard you work, no matter how perfect you try to be, she's not approving of you, and you are chasing after the wind. For some of you, you're trying to win that approval of your father. You're trying to get your dad to just smile at you in approval, to give you that hug and embrace you genuinely. For some of you, you're trying to win the approval of your father who already passed away. And you're working and you're striving, but really it's chasing after the wind. Now, listen, that desire for approval, that desire for acceptance, deep down, I honestly think it's a good thing. I think that God actually placed that there, but we can get it misaligned. We can place way too much emphasis on the approval of people. We can get it all mixed up. And so we've got to stop and ask this powerful question: who am I doing this for? Whose approval am I competing for? And do they even know? Do they even care? So final thought today: what if the secret to contentment is found in who you are living for? What if the secret contentment is not what you're living for and how much stuff you can accumulate and how many goals you can check off of your list? But what if the secret to contentment is found in who you are living for? And the only one that you need to concern yourself with as it relates to your worth is your Father in heaven. Come on, y'all. Right? No matter what anyone has told you or what you have believed, God thinks your worth is the life of His one and only Son. That's how much you're worth, believe it or not. So we've got a choice to make. Are we going to work and toil and strive and compare and be driven to and est and chase after the wind? Or are we going to stop and remember that we get to live for the one who first loved us? Who am I doing this for? So, will you stand with me today? We're going to close with a prayer and a portion of a song. And this is not an exit song. This is a moment for you to dial in and make this concrete. Let me read to you 1 John 4, 7 through 10 out of the Message. This is the truth of how your Father in heaven feels about you. This is how God showed His love for us. God sent His only Son into the world so that we might live through Jesus. This is the kind of love we're talking about. Not that we once upon a time first loved God, no, but that He loved us first and sent His Son as a sacrifice to clear away our sin and the damage we had done to our relationship with God. Come on. Man, that's the truth about you. So if you're distant from Jesus today, you can come home. You don't have to measure up anymore. Jesus did all the proving. He proved His love for you on the cross. He proved His power by rising from the dead. Come on, let's pray. Jesus, thank you for loving us enough. We don't have to chase after the wind. We don't have to run around like crazy and compare ourselves. You're our Father in heaven, and we love you tremendously. So thank you for loving us first. In Jesus' name, amen. Come on, put your hands together. Let's thank Him for who He is. Thank you, Jesus.